Hello. Well, there's not much that we have to go through today. However, there are a few important things. The first thing I want to do is I want to go over my current assignment, what is expected of me, and maybe we will touch upon building programs that are cross-platform uh, usable. Second, I want to go over the major change from Qt 5 to Qt 6. If you aren't familiar with Qt Creator, it is an integrated development environment that makes it very simple to create graphic user interfaces on a myriad of platforms by leveraging C++ and Qt's internal functionality. And finally, we may talk about how I managed to get 2 out of 100 for my first assignment. Okay, this is Qt Creator as you can see, and here are some application examples, some desktop examples, some mobile examples, and some embedded examples. We also have some graphics, multimedia, 3D, even data visualization, and so on. So let's first of all go back to the assignment. Here it is. So assignment 2, introduction. And if you read it, it states, please use CMake and not QMake. Now, let me grab my, see if this is working, cool. Okay, QMake was the build system that had been leveraged from Q1 all the way to Q5. It was their internal system. So, the original build system, and it was made out of necessity. However, because the standard, spelled that wrong, original, right. However, CMake on the other hand is the standard. So now in Qt 6, they have chose, when I say they, I mean the people who work at Qt.io, well that's a website anyway, Qt, have chosen to move from QMake to CMake. And we'll go over why I'm not a big fan of that, even though it does make a lot more sense. Alright, so please use CMake when setting up your assignment projects, not QMake. We are also told Qt Designer should not be used to design any of the user interfaces. Qt Designer essentially allows you to have drag and drop functionality. So instead of hard coding, you can pull in some widgets. It still generates code that you can interact with, but it does make setting up your widgets and your layouts a lot easier. I am also expected to manually set up the GUIs to ensure properly handle memory using Qt's parent-child functionality. Now, C++, even though it's a high-level language, it's not a very high-level language. So just like C, it can operate on direct memory. And we have to make sure that we don't overextend our memory usage and that we properly return memory back to where it should be. So the free store or the heap. Wait, free store is the heap. I should say just the heap. And obviously, good programming practices should be followed, such as single functionality, obvious naming of functions and classes, avoiding God functions, which is essentially a function that does a lot of things instead of just doing one thing. Apart from this, we have good indentation. We should try to handle errors and exceptions. We should, what else? Avoid using global variables as much as we can. Avoid hard-coded values, avoid magic numbers, and we should try to document and comment our code if needed. Alright, and something we also should do, because again, this is Qt is very object-oriented friendly, we should try to use code modularity and usability, which basically means breaking our large project into multiple pieces that can be reused here and there, and that aren't essentially dependent on each other. Okay, cool. It also tells us here, follow standard naming conventions, so class names start with a capital letter, variable and function names start with a lowercase letter, using camel case for names, made up of multiple words. Okay. This is camel case right here. We should ensure consistent code layout and use of blank lines. Use forward class declarations in header files. So instead of doing an include, I will just call out the class name and provide the include in the definition file, so my .cpp file. And I must use initialize a list in constructors, which is a nice way of saying initialize any variables in the parent by using the initializer list instead of going into the body of the constructor. And then I must have proper GUI management, such as setting cursor focus, sequential tabbing, clearing input widgets, like text input fields being cleared and spin boxes being returned to some default value. I must also enable and disable buttons as needed, and I should provide appropriate user feedback. And obviously my code should build and run without any warnings. Move on to section 2, which is the actual questions. And here's question 1. I just wrote it, but just to give myself some clarity. So study the following UML class diagram. So this is it, but I'm just going to show you the one that I created. Here we go. Okay. Let's take some time and just take in this UML class diagram. We notice we have 5 classes: person, registration, registration list, student registration, and guest registration. And these arrows indicate some kind of relationship. And this is quite easy. So the person and registration classes have a composition relationship. This means that registration cannot exist without person. If you notice that same kind of relationship with a solid black line and a black diamond, it's also one for registration list, which means registration list, it cannot exist without registration. This is also a composition relationship. As for these two, arrows with a blank arrowhead indicates inheritance. So our parent is registration, and our 2 children are student registration and guest registration. And let's just go over some of the multiplicities. Multiplicities are these little numbers that you see on some of the arrows. This means that one person object is in some way related to a registration object. And many, this star represents many. It means many registration objects are associated with some number of registration list objects. So typically, when you work in multiplicities, you should have numbers on both sides. But if you aren't, then you should infer from context. An example here would be if we see we have a queue list called m_attendee list, and it takes as the value or registration or pointers to registration objects. So this indicates that one registration list will contain many registration objects via this private variable called attendee list. So it's a many to one relationship here. Can I draw here? Edit image. I don't like this. We can do this some other time. Okay, yeah, so it's many to one. As for person and registration, let's see. It should be 1 to 1 because we see that M attendee is a person and it doesn't seem to be any collection or a list or a vector or a map, anything of that sort. It just seems to be a 1 to 1 relationship. So let's study these UML class diagrams in more detail. Let's start off with person. In UML is the standard modeling language. I believe it's a unified modeling language. And there are other modeling languages and other modeling techniques. But this one, again, it's the standard. So if you see a minus, it essentially means private scope. We have M underscore. I'm gonna omit the M underscore, okay? We have a name, affiliation, and email. These are all of types QString. Now, if you aren't familiar with Qt, you probably aren't aware what a QString is. As I said, Qt has its own internal environment and its own data types. QString happens to be one of those. These are all private types QString for the class person. We then have 5 functions. The first function is person. This is obviously our constructor. And it should initialize the name, the affiliation, and the email. We then have 3 get methods which should return the name, the affiliation, and email. And as you appropriately see, they tell you that it returns Q-strings, as these are themselves Q-strings. We then have a toString method. A toString method is basically a way or a method that you call when you want to print data that belongs to a instance of the class. So toString at most will print out the name, if they have any affiliations, and what is their current email. And as we see, one person is associated with one registration, which it composed of 2 private variables called attendee and booking date. Attendee is a person, which means, again, as I said, a composition relationship, so without person, registration could not exist. We also have a booking date, which is a queue date. Now, if you're familiar with working with C++, you know how annoying it is to work with things like dates and times. It's a lot easier using Qt Creator. What's going on here? That's very weird, but anyway, okay. We then see we have a standard fee. This seems to be a constant that must never change and is of type double. It seems like I messed up my how I created this diagram, but that's fine. So we have a standard fee because it's plus. I forgot to mention, if it has a plus, it means it is public. Typically, all members, which are variables, are made private, and all functions are typically made public or at most protected. Of course, these aren't hard fast rules. These tend to change depending on the situation. So we notice that we have 2 private variables, that being attendee and booking date, person and queue date, and a public member called standard fee. Member just means variable, okay? And standard fee is a double, so just a large float number. We then have a registration, which itself is a constructor, a get attendee, a get booking date, which should return attendee and booking date. We have calculate fee, so calculate some amount and return it in the form of a double, and the toString method, which again should print out these 3 values in some way. And one registration list has many registrations. Or something else I forgot to mention. You will see some UML diagram or some diagrams in general that show names somewhere along the arrows. So you'll see something like registration list has many registrations, or registration consists of person. All these do is basically name the relationship. They provide more clarity into the relationships to make it easier to understand. So as I'm saying, many registrations are found within one registration list, or if you read it backward, one registration list consists of many registrations. We see we have a variable called attendee list, which is a queue list of type registration. This is a template class, and I know this because I've built template classes and I just know the syntax here, which basically means typically we'll create a variable in C++ and we have to stick with that variable. However, because of the power of templates, we can essentially change those values that we are using. So we can have a vector that's one of type integer, one of type double, one of type string, one of type char. It's quite irrelevant. We then see we have, again, 5 public members. The first one is a add registration, which should obviously add a registration to our attendee list. And I'm assuming if it's successful, then I'll return true. If it's not successful, I'll return false. That's what a Boolean is. Now, if you aren't familiar with what this next type of function is, it's called a destructor. A constructor runs when an object is created successfully. A destructor runs when an object is no longer in program scope, which is nice to have say when the program ends. And what it should do is, when you're working with, as you see, pointers, which essentially hold memory, it should deallocate that memory. So I can just do a delete m_attendee list. We then have 3 more functions: is registered, total fee, and total registration. Should return a Boolean, a double, and an integer. Now, we'll come down to these two classes, student registration and guest registration. I should have gotten some water before I started this video. But anyway. Okay. Let's come back here. We have student registration, which is a child of the class registration, which means it inherits all of these properties. Well, it'll inherit everything, but it won't be able to directly access these two. It'll have to do it by calling the parent initializer. So we notice a student registration has one new member called qualification, which it itself is a queue-string. We have a student registration which will call the registration parent initializer to initialize the person, and it itself will initialize the queue. Queue for qualification, okay. We then have a calculate fees function, which this can just call the, no, should I call the parent? Can I overload? They both exist. Can I override? If I call the parent, I can do that, and I'll just have to either add a little more or decrease a little more, is my assumption. And then toString, again, I can just call the parent toString function and just add a little more functionality around that. To read this, we can say student registration inherits from registration. The same way we can read guest registration inherits from registration. And we see its new variable or its new member is called category of type queueString. It too has the exact same three methods as student registration, which will be implemented in a very similar fashion. Cool. Now let's move on back to the question. Here it is here, and I was just writing out some stuff when I first went over it. Okay. I'm told that the UML class diagram is an initial design of classes for a conference registration application. Okay. Getting some important information here. Cool. And let me just grab my highlighter. Okay. And we are told that there are three types of registrations allowed for the conference, that being standard registration, which is obviously just this one called registration, student registration, and invited guest registration. We are also given some more information here. The standard reg fee is the standard fee stored in standard fee, but they haven't told me what that is, okay. So I'm assuming I can create my own. For those registered as students, the conference fee is half the price of the standard fee, okay. And for those registered as guests, the conference fee is it's only 10% of the standard registration fee. Oh, they're doing the students dirty. They always do the students dirty. Okay, the next paragraph, I am told an instance of registration list contains a list of registration pointers, okay. No two registrations are allowed to have the same attendees. Let me read that again. No two registrations are allowed to have attendees with the same email address unless the names are different. Okay. You should also be able to query a registration list, whether by person, by the name, to find out if they are already registered for the conference. A registration list can also return the number of attendees that are registered for the conference from an institution, okay? Similarly, you can request the total registration fees for a type, be it for registration to the net standard, student reg, or guest reg, or all, okay? I am expected to use Qt's meta object system to access the type of registration in registration list, okay? This is something like reflective programming, typically not built into C++, but as I said, Qt comes with its own functionality that essentially improves on a lot of C++ in its own way, so that's really cool. So far, I haven't given any information on why I should actually be designing, but okay, here we are. I am to write a GUI application that allows users to register for a conference. The GUI should display the current list of registrations, including the respective reg fees in the registration list at all times using a table widget, okay? A table widget, that's fine. The interface, so the means of communicate, the interface is essentially so we'll have a boundary, right? We'll have the user and you'll have the computer. The interface is typically thought of as the object that is used to communicate on both sides. That's what an interface is, okay? It allows for communication. So the interface should allow users to request and view the results of various operations supported by the registration list. Okay, so essentially, I would have to use Qt's meta object system to allow users to see these one, two, three, four, these four functions. Not the destructor, of course, just the four functions. Okay. And there's no initializer here. Okay. Cool. Right. I am allowed to add new features to the classes given the UML diagram. Okay, that's cool. Although I am not allowed to delete or change the given functions. Okay, obviously. So if needed, I can add anything new, but I'm not allowed to delete anything. Okay. So that's cool. I'm allowed to essentially choose a lot of what goes on here, which is always fun. It's not been nice being given a lot of things that you have to follow. It's good being able to essentially choose your own. You can decide on the design of the GUIs. Okay, so it's up onto me. I hate that. As I just said, it's fun being able to choose, but sometimes it may be weird to say, but it's quite difficult to come up with a design unless you're just someone who just likes doing design. And I can decide on that design of the GUI, and it can be done manually or using Qt Designer. I'm expected to follow good programming practices. Hey, listen, these two things seem to be in contradiction. Where were you? Let's see. Where is it? 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 Hey. I read this, okay? Qt Designer should not be used to design any of the UIs. Alrighty. I assume that means I can use it to make up a design really quick, but I'm not allowed to use the Qt Designer in my final project, is my best assumption. I'll be completely honest, I'm not a big fan of Qt Designer. I prefer manually coding, but so obviously, had they not told me, I would have just used Qt Designer anyway, or my whiteboard, or any of the other modeling tools available. Okay, cool. And question 2 will come back to, should be next week. Let me see, question 2. 3, 4, and that's 18. So 4, 8, 12, 16. If I take 4 days, question 1, question 2. So yeah, and the next, so on the 5th or the 6th, okay, here today's the 1st. I'm not starting today. If I start on the 2nd, it'll be 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So this will be, let me just make it very clear that this is going to be, the date is the 6th, or the right, this is going to be the 6th, and then I'll begin on the 6th, then from the 6th to the 7th to the 8th to the 9th, 6, 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 8, 9, I'll be done. And then I'll begin on the 10th here, so the 10th, obviously this is July, the 10th, and then I'll complete this by 10, 11, 12, 13, so 6, 7, 8, 9, beginning on the 10th, so 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'll begin this on the 14th. Alright, cool. So the 14th, and I believe that this is due on the 16th or the 18th. I'll have to check on that. But anyway, there's just a logo there. And this is something I'm not looking forward to do. XML formatted, that's going to be a little annoying, but it is what it is. Alright. So I went through a lot of that. And at times, it's very important to essentially sharpen your axe before you go start cutting trees, okay? Don't always just jump straight into your code. Doesn't matter if you're building an application or if you're just working on lead code problems. Now, as I said, Qt 6, they chose to go with CMake instead of QMake. So if I go to create project, and let me just choose, I'm going to go to widgets just so I can show you the drag and drop functionality. Let me call you something like, let me first change my directory, which should be my desktop. My shortcut should be, no, cute. My shortcut, here we go, all right. Here it is. All right, and let me just call you hello world Qt 6. Cool. And then you can see I can select my build system. I can choose QMake, so I can obviously use an older system. I have CMake. I forget what is the... I know this is abbreviation, QBS. I forget what the full form is, so obviously we'll stick with CMake because we've been told we have to use it. And then have my details. This is the class that I want to use. I can obviously change this from being a main window to just being a widget, but main window is good, that's fine. Generate form, this is our Qt designer. And language, so translation file, I don't translate it, I'm good on that. And next, and summary, cool. And that will just get my project running. This file isn't part of any project. That's fine, it's just built in the project, as you can see here. There we go, problems gone. And everything should start fixing itself, autocorrecting. Okay, cool. So as you can see, we have this CMake list file that's been generated for us. Now, I've used CMake before, and it's quite a difficult technology to pick up. But as I said, it is a standard, so you have to get used to it at some point if you're using systems that use CMake, especially in C and C++ and their associated tools. Now, I want to show you something. Let's say I go into main C++ and I do hashtag include a Q push button, right? I get an error. And what the error says, oh, I don't get an error. It gave me a Q application. That's interesting. Did it actually include it? Let's see. Find package. Where are you? Find. Here we go. Find package. Oh, they gave me the widgets. That's interesting. So they gave me the widgets. Find package. Interesting. So I assume last time I got an error because I chose a console application. That's cool. That's really cool. Alright, that's cool. So if I were to use a widgets application, they'll give me the widgets. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? Because they give me a widgets application. Which means the error only occurs, let me just add a little comment. The error occurs when it is not a widgets. That's spelled wrong. Actually, I like it. Widgets. Widgets app. Okay, that's cool. So typically, if you're working with QMake and you wanted to add widgets, you just do Qt plus equals widgets, okay? And this would mean all the classes and all the functionality that belongs to the widgets component or widgets library will be imported into your project for use. Now you see how this very short line, this is equivalent to this line 13 here, which you can see is just not as simple to use. Find package, Qt names, Qt6, Qt5, required components widget. I'm just going to add another one called core in case I need to use it. Actually, this is just a hello world, I won't need it. So yeah, anyway, let's go here. Let's create a Qt dialog. And I'll just, let's see, do I get it? Cool. And actually, I don't need a dialog because I have a main window. Cool. Look at me being all silly. And if I do w.set window title, hello Qt6, cool. And I'll just close it off. I'll do a Control B to build. And it takes a lot longer than Qt5, just the nature of CMake. And if I do a Control Run, there we go. Here's a window where we can build our GUI with the title of Hello Qt6. And that's all for this project. And tomorrow I'll begin development of the assignment and we'll go through that while I'm building it. All right. Ciao.